My name is Marlene Whitford, and I am 72 years old. My dear friend, before I take you into this story, let me sit you down the way a mother would sit her child. Listen closely, because what I am about to share is not just a story. It is a lesson I learned the hardest possible way. I do not want you to make the same mistakes I made. So as I talk, ask yourself what you would have done. Ask yourself if you would have seen the signs earlier than I did. I lived most of my life in a quiet town in South Carolina. Nothing fancy, just old oak trees, a long porch that wrapped around the house my husband and I built, and neighbors who still waved when they drove by. I worked as a school cafeteria worker for 25 years, and I raised my only son with everything in me. I was never rich. I lived on a small pension, a little social security, and a whole lot of hope that my son would grow into a man who would protect me the way I protected him. But life does not always follow the promises we imagine. Before we begin, my dear friend, if you love stories that speak to your heart, that teach you something real, and that remind you that you are not alone in your struggles, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. You will not want to miss the stories I bring your way. Also, tell me in the comments where in this big country you are watching from. Let me know who is sitting with me today. I always love to know who my dear friends are. Now, let us step into the very moment this whole storm began. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sun feels soft on your skin. My family had gathered in my living room for what was supposed to be a peaceful dinner. The kind of dinner where people laugh, pass plates around, and argue about who makes the best cornbread. I had cooked all morning. Pot roast, macaroni baked until it had a golden crust, collard greens, peach cobbler. The house smelled like every memory of my motherhood. My son, Daryl, sat on one side of the table. His wife, Sienna, sat on the other. Sienna was 31, beautiful, smart, always dressed like she was stepping out of a magazine, but she had a sharp tongue, and she made sure I felt it. Every time she visited, I felt like I was standing in my own house as a stranger. She corrected me. She rolled her eyes at me. She sighed whenever I spoke. And Daryl, my only child, always sat silently like a little boy afraid of choosing the wrong parent. But that Sunday, she came with a tone in her voice that told me she had a mission. I felt it before she said a word. When everyone finished eating, she placed her fork down slowly, wiped her mouth, and looked around the room like she was the queen of something. Then she said the words that froze my whole body. I am moving out. The room went silent. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause. My heart dropped, not because she was leaving, but because of the fire behind her next sentence. And before any of you feel sorry for me, let me make something clear. This house is not hers. It is not Daryl's either, and it was never supposed to be mine. My fork slipped out of my hand. "What are you talking about, Sienna?" I asked her. She crossed her arms and leaned back. "Oh, you mean Daryl never told you the house you are sitting in, the one you brag about building with your husband, it is not yours. It never was. You do not own anything here, and I am done pretending." My dear friend, let me tell you the truth. My bones froze. My mind raced. My chest tightened. You know that feeling when someone pulls the ground from under you? You smile on the outside because you do not want anyone to see your fear, but inside, you feel like you are falling. I looked at my son. He would not even look at me. Sienna continued, her voice sharp enough to slice through every memory I had built inside those walls. "This whole place belongs to the bank, and once I move out, Daryl and I are figuring out what to do next. And let me warn you ahead, things are about to change." My hand gently touched the table because I could feel my body trembling. But I forced myself to sit still, forced myself to breathe, forced myself not to cry in front of a woman who was enjoying every second of my confusion. My dear friend, let me ask you something. What would you have done if you were me? Would you have shouted? Would you have walked away? Would you have told her to leave your home? What would your heart do if, at 72 years old, you were told that the house you believed was yours was never yours at all? My son finally opened his mouth, but the words he spoke made everything worse. Mama, we need to talk, and I do not want you to get upset, but there is something I should have told you a long time ago. I looked at him, and for the first time since he was a boy, I saw guilt behind his eyes. Heavy guilt, the kind you cannot hide. Something inside me whispered, "Marlene, brace yourself. This is only the beginning." He stood up from the table, cleared his throat, and said words that felt like knives. "Mama, there is something you need to know about Dad, and about this house, something he kept from you for more than 20 years. My heart stopped, and before he could speak another word, Sienna smugly added, "Tell her everything, Daryl, all of it, since we are finally being honest today. My dear friend, let me tell you this. When a family secret begins with silence, the truth behind it is never small." And in that moment, I knew my life was about to change forever. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what my son revealed next. My dear friend, when my son opened his mouth that Sunday afternoon, I felt my whole world tilt. I sat there, staring at the man I raised, the same boy whose small hands once clung to my dress when he was scared. And now, here he was, standing over me like a stranger holding a secret he had protected for years. Daryl swallowed hard. He rubbed the back of his neck the way he always did when he was hiding something big. His eyes shifted toward the window, then back to me, then down to the floor. That was when I knew this secret was not small. This was something that had been sitting on his chest for a long time. "Mama," Daryl said, his voice shaky. "Dad did something before he died, something that involved this house." My breath caught in my throat. My husband, Samuel, passed away 18 years ago. The man I loved. The man I trusted with every dream I ever had. The man who promised me that this house would be the place where we grew old together. The man who told me not to worry about anything because he would always take care of us. I whispered, "What about your father, Daryl? What did he do?" Sienna rolled her eyes and tapped her fingernails on the table. For her, this was entertainment. For me, it was the ground under my life cracking open. Daryl began packing, breathing heavily. "Mama, I should have told you. I should have said something years ago. But I thought you would not survive hearing it." My heart thumped in my ears. My dear friend, you ever have a moment where your whole spirit feels like it is bracing for impact? That was me, sitting there with my hands folded tightly just to stop them from shaking. Daryl finally stopped packing, leaned on the chair across from me, and spoke the words that shattered my world. "Dad refinanced the house without telling you. He refinanced it twice, and when he died, the debt became my responsibility. Mama, the house was never paid off, and then it got worse. I took out another loan on it a few years ago to cover some things I was dealing with. I thought I could fix everything before you found out, but I could not." Silence. Heavy, crushing, cold. My dear friend, let me ask you something. If the person you trusted most in your life kept a secret like that from you, what would it do to your heart? Would you collapse? Would you scream? Would you sit quietly like I did, trying to breathe through a pain so deep you could not even find words? I stared at my son, my baby, my pride, the only child I poured my entire life into. My voice was barely a whisper. "Why, Daryl, why would you do that to me? Why would your father do that to me?" Tears filled his eyes. "Mama, Dad had medical bills he never told you about. He tried to protect you. He thought he could handle it all himself. But after he passed, the loan company came after me because my name was listed as the secondary contact. I was scared, Mama. I was young. I did not know what to do." I clasped my hands together on the table. My fingers felt numb. Mama, Daryl continued, I thought if I took out another loan and fixed my own mess, I could catch up and put everything back in your name. But life kept getting harder. Jobs came and went. Bills piled up. And Sienna, well, she was not happy when she found out. Sienna lifted her chin proudly. I am not going to drown in someone else's debt. This is not my mess. And I am not going to stay in a house that belongs to the bank. I need a clean start. And Daryl should want that too. I looked at her slowly, calmly, deeply, and for a moment I saw it, the real truth. This woman never loved my son. She loved stability. She loved comfort. She loved image. And the moment things were not pretty anymore, she ran. But what cut deepest was not her leaving. It was her next sentence. Besides, Marlene, she said, leaning back like she owned the air around her, once the bank moves forward with the final notice, you will need to figure out where to go next. Daryl and I cannot hold this together anymore. My voice cracked. Where to go next? This is my home. Not on paper it is not, she answered quickly, like she had been waiting to say those words. I felt the room spin. I held the edge of the table to steady myself. My dear friend, let me ask you this. If someone tried to throw you out of the very place you scrubbed clean, painted with your own hands, cried in, laughed in, raised a child in, what would you do? Would you fight? Would you beg? Would you stand tall even if your knees trembled? I looked at my son again, hoping he would defend me, hoping he would tell his wife to stop, hoping maybe I had misunderstood something. But Daryl wiped his tears and whispered words that sliced through every memory I had of holding him, bathing him, reading to him, loving him. Mama, I am sorry, but you cannot stay here forever. My chest tightened so fast I had to press a hand against my heart. I whispered, are you telling me to leave the home I built? Are you telling me to get out? Daryl looked down, ashamed. Mama, it is complicated. No, Sienna snapped, it is simple. She has to figure out her life. We have ours. My dear friend, do you know what it feels like to be pushed out of your own family by someone who married into it? You ever feel your own child slipping away from you piece by piece, and you keep telling yourself it is just stress, or marriage pressure, or life happening, but then you find out you were wrong the whole time. I sat back slowly, trying to hold myself together, but inside me something was cracking, something old, something loyal, something that had been patient for too long. I whispered, Daryl, after everything I sacrificed for you, after all the years I spent making sure you had the life, I did not. You are choosing her over me. He whispered, it is not choosing, Mama. It is life. Life, that is what he called it. But before I could speak again, before I could even gather my thoughts, something unexpected happened. Something that shifted the entire air in the room. The front door suddenly swung open, and the last person I expected to see stood in the doorway. My knees nearly buckled. My dear friend, the moment that door swung open, I felt the air change. The same living room where my son had just told me I had no home left suddenly felt too small, too tight, like every secret in the world had squeezed itself into those four walls. And then I saw her. Standing in the doorway was a woman I had not laid eyes on in almost 20 years. A woman who used to walk into my kitchen like she belonged there. A woman who once held my son's heart in the palm of her hand. It was Lorian. She looked older, yes, but still carried the same quiet fire in her eyes. The kind of fire a woman gets when life has pushed her hard, but she refuses to fall. Her hair was streaked with gray now, pulled into a loose bun. She held a folder in one hand. Her other hand trembled slightly. Sienna stood up straight, her face twisting in surprise and irritation. What are you doing here? Daryl froze, his whole body stiffened. His mouth opened, but no words came out. And my heart dropped, because I remembered everything. The laughter, the arguments, the day she left. The day my son cried like a child after losing the woman he believed he would marry. Lorian stepped inside slowly. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "We need to talk, all of us." Sienna scoffed loudly. "Talk about what?" Lorian lifted the folder in her hand. "About this, and about the truth that should have been told years ago." "My dear friend, let me pause here and ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where you could feel your past walking right back into your life, whether you invited it or not, whether you were ready or not? That was me. Sitting in my living room, watching a ghost from my son's past return with a purpose written all over her face." Daryl rubbed his forehead. "Lorian, this is not a good time." She ignored him. Instead, she looked at me. Her eyes softened in a way that made me feel seen, really seen. "Miss Marlene, I am so sorry you had to find out this way. I never wanted this moment for you." For a second, I struggled to breathe. "Lorian, what is going on? What is in that folder?" But before she could answer, Sienna marched closer, arms crossed tightly. "You need to leave. You have no business here. This is our home." Lorian raised an eyebrow. "Your home?" Her tone sliced through the room like a cold wind. Daryl stepped forward quickly. "Lorian, please, we talked about this. You said you would not get involved." Lorian shook her head. "I said I would not hurt your mother, but that was before you started hurting her yourself." Those words hit Daryl so hard that even Sienna glanced at him. Then Lorian walked over to the dining table and placed the folder down. She opened it slowly, and I could see papers inside, stacks of them. Her voice grew serious, steady, like someone who had rehearsed this moment for years. "Miss Marlene, everything in this folder belongs to you. Everything I am about to say, you deserve to know." My hands began to shake. I pressed them together in my lap, trying to look stronger than I felt. Daryl stared at the folder like it was a bomb about to go off. Sienna stepped back, arms uncrossed, suddenly unsure of herself. Lorian took a deep breath and continued. "Before your husband died, he signed something. Something that should have stayed between you and him, but someone interfered. Someone used it for their own benefit, and that someone has been lying to you for years." My mouth went dry. Who lied to me? Before she answered, she reached into the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It looked old, creased, maybe handled too many times. She handed it to me. I stared at the page. My eyes scanned the words slowly, my heart thudding against my ribs. It was a deed. A house deed. And it had my name on it. My name. Except the date at the bottom did not match anything I remembered. It was dated 3 months before my husband died. I whispered, "I do not understand. Samuel never gave this to me. I never saw this." Daryl closed his eyes, tightly like he already knew what was coming. Lorian said softly, "He did give it to you. He had it prepared. He planned to tell you the day before he went in for his final surgery. He wanted to leave the house in your name so you would never struggle, but someone intercepted it before it reached you." My breath caught. "Who did that? Who took it?" Lorian looked directly at Daryl. He looked away. My stomach twisted. My dear friend, I knew something was wrong, but I did not expect what came next. Lorian continued. Daryl stopped the process. He convinced the lawyer to delay the transfer. Your husband never knew. He passed believing the deed was in your hands. My fingers went cold. I stared at my son, not believing what I was hearing. Daryl whispered, "Mama, I was young. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought if the house stayed in my name too, it would be safer. I did not think." But Lorian cut him off. "You did not think about your mother. You thought about yourself. And later, you thought about your wife. Sienna snapped. I have nothing to do with this. Lorien turned toward her slowly. Really, the extra loan was your idea. You told him the house was an easy way to get quick money. You told him he could put it back before his mother ever found out. Every drop of color drained from Sienna's face. I felt the room spinning. I held onto the edge of the table to keep from falling over. My own child had done this. The woman he married added to it. And the house I believed was built on love was suddenly sitting on lies. But Lorien was not finished. She reached back into the folder and pulled out another paper. This one was stamped, signed, and recent. Miss Marlene, she said, this is why I came today. This one page could change everything for you. My dear friend, I held that page with trembling hands. And when I read the first sentence, I gasped so loudly that even Sienna jumped. Because this paper held a truth that none of them expected. A truth that would shift the entire future. A truth that would put power back into my hands. My dear friend, when my eyes touched the first line of that paper, I felt my breath catch in my throat. It was like the room grew so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I held the page gently, afraid that even breathing too hard would make the truth disappear. The words were simple, clear, powerful. Notice of reassignment of deed to primary owner, Marlene Whitford. I blinked, read it again, then again. My name was on it. Not Daryl's. Not Sienna's. Mine. My hands shook. My lips parted, but no sound came out. For a moment, I felt like my soul stepped outside my body, trying to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Daryl whispered, Mama, please, let me explain. But I could not yet. My heart needed to understand. My mind needed to breathe. I looked up at Lorien. She stood tall, strong, steady, like a woman who had carried this burden quietly through years of pain and had finally reached the moment she had waited for. She said softly, Miss Marlene, your husband wanted this house to be yours, entirely yours. Before he passed, he made arrangements to change the deed. But when Daryl stopped the transfer, the lawyer kept a copy of everything. After your husband died, the lawyer reached out to Daryl many times, but Daryl ignored it. Eventually, the file was marked inactive. I turned slowly toward my son. Daryl looked like a broken man. His shoulders sagged. His eyes were red. His hands were at his sides, shaking. I whispered, why would you hide this from me? Why would you take this away from me? He took a step toward me. Mama, I was scared. When Dad died, I felt like everything was collapsing. I was drowning in bills. I thought if I kept the deed in my name too, I could take care of things, protect us both. And later, when things got bad, I thought I could fix it before you ever found out. Sienna cut in quickly, oh please, Marlene. Do not let him guilt you. Your husband should have talked to you himself. This was bound to happen. Some people just hide things. Lorien glared at her. And some people push others into deeper trouble. You encouraged him to take out loans he could not handle. You helped bury this family in debt. You made him believe money mattered more than his own mother. Sienna rolled her eyes. Do not blame me. I did what any wife would do. I protected my future. Lorien smirked. Then why are you running away now? Why are you moving out? What happened to being the strong wife? Sienna's jaw tightened. My future does not involve living in a house that is practically sinking. I am leaving because I deserve better. My dear friend, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone reveal their true character right in front of you? Have you ever seen a person's mask fall off so clearly that you wondered how you did not see it before? That was Sienna. Clear as day, cold, calculated, and only loyal to herself. But Lorien was not finished. She tapped the paper gently. Miss Marlene, this document is the final update from the lawyer. The debt on the house is still there, but the legal ownership has shifted back to the person your husband intended. You. My soul trembled. I could not speak. Daryl covered his face, ashamed. Mama, I tried to stop all this. I really did. But I failed. I know I failed you. For the first time since the conversation began, tears filled my eyes. Hot, heavy, sharp. They slid down my cheeks before I could wipe them away. My child, my only child, the one I carried for 9 months, the one I fed, held, and soothed, the one I fought for, had betrayed me, broken my trust, torn my heart, and yet I still saw the scared boy inside him. I said quietly, "You did not fail me, Daryl. You failed yourself." He looked up at me, and his lips trembled. Mama, I never meant for this to happen. I did not think it would spiral like this. I thought I had time. I thought everything would work itself out. But before he could finish, Sienna cut in sharply, enough with the tears. This house is a mess, and I am not going down with it. If Daryl wants to stay and drown, he can. But I am done. Done with the debt, done with the drama, and done with pretending this place has a future. She turned toward the doorway. I am leaving today. My bags are already packed. Daryl stared at her in shock. You packed without telling me. She did not even blink. I told you I was unhappy. You chose not to listen. That is not my fault. He stepped back like she had slapped him. Sienna, please, we can talk. She shrugged. Talk about what the house is worth nothing. Your mother has the deed. You are buried in bills. What future is that for me, Daryl? I gave you years of my life. I am not giving you any more. My dear friend, do you know what silence sounds like when a heart breaks? It does not always come with screaming or throwing things. Sometimes it is quiet, deep, slow, like something inside you is shrinking. Daryl collapsed onto the chair, his face buried in his hands. Sienna marched toward the door without glancing back. But before she stepped outside, Lorian spoke. You are walking out now, but you might want to stay long enough to hear the rest. This is not just about the deed. Sienna paused. Why would I care about anything else? Lorian turned to me. Miss Marlene, there is one more document in this folder. One that explains why the lawyer kept your files separate. One that explains why he reached out to me last month. I blinked. He reached out to you. Lorian nodded. Yes, because your husband included someone else in the final instruction. Someone he trusted deeply. My dear friend, my stomach twisted into knots. I whispered, who did he name? Lorian? Who else is involved in this? She reached into the folder, pulled out the last paper, and held it up slowly. Then she said a name that made Daryl lift his head instantly. A name that made Sienna stop mid-step. A name that made my heart slam against my ribs. Your husband listed a secondary beneficiary. Someone you know. Someone who was never supposed to be forgotten. The moment Lorian lifted that final page, I felt the whole room tighten. It was like every breath inside the house paused, waiting to hear the name that had been hidden from me for almost 2 decades. My heart thumped so loudly I could hear it in my ears. My palms grew warm. My throat felt dry. Lorian looked right at me, then slowly read the name aloud. Evelyn Rowe. The paper slipped from my hand. My dear friend, when I tell you my knees nearly gave out, I am not exaggerating. That name carried a history I never wanted to revisit. A history I prayed was buried forever. A history I never wanted my son to know. Daryl stood quickly, confusion written all over his face. Evelyn, what does she have to do with anything? Sienna narrowed her eyes. Who is Evelyn? But I could not answer. My breath shook. Memories I had locked deep inside me began to rise like ghosts. Lorian sighed, knowing the pain she had just opened. "Miss Marlene, I know this is hard, but your husband named Evelyn as the secondary beneficiary on the house. If the deed could not be placed solely in your name before he passed, it was to be divided between you and her." Daryl blinked rapidly. "Mama, who is this woman?" I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. She was your father's sister, your aunt." His eyes widened. "Aunt Evelyn, but I thought she cut ties with the family years before I was even born." I nodded slowly. "Yes, she did. But your father still cared about her, even when she was gone from our lives." Sienna scoffed, crossing her arms. "And let me guess, this mystery woman is now coming to take half the house." Lorian shook her head. "That is the part you do not understand. Evelyn has been gone for a long time." Daryl frowned. "Gone, where did she go?" Lorian inhaled deeply. "She passed away 3 years ago." The room fell silent. Sienna shifted uncomfortably. "Then what does this have to do with us? Why would a dead woman matter?" Lorian looked at me with eyes full of something I could not read. "Miss Marlene, Evelyn had a daughter." My heart stalled. "No. No." I whispered she never had children. She told me she never could. Lorian opened the folder again and pulled out a photograph. She placed it gently on the table in front of me. "Miss Marlene, she lied, or she hid it. Evelyn had one child, a daughter she kept secret from the entire family." Daryl leaned over the table, staring at the photograph. A young woman, maybe 25, with soft eyes, curly hair, and a face that looked strangely familiar. He whispered, "She looks like Dad." And she did. I felt my chest tighten. The curve of the jaw, the eyebrows, even the small dimple in her chin, all of it echoed my husband. I pressed a hand against my mouth, overwhelmed. Lorian continued softly, "This young woman is the legal heir to Evelyn's portion of the property. The lawyer spent years trying to track her down, but she moved around constantly. Recently, she finally responded. And now, she wants to meet you." Sienna laughed out loud. "Oh, this is insane. So now some stranger is supposed to show up and claim half of this disaster of a house." But Daryl was not laughing. He stared at the photo as if the world around him had disappeared. "Mama," he whispered, "Dad never told you about her, never mentioned her." I shook my head. He kept that secret close. I always believed Evelyn had left and never looked back. I never imagined she left behind a child. "My dear friend, let me tell you something. A mother's heart knows many types of pain, but discovering a hidden piece of your family, that pain cuts in a way that feels heavy and cold at the same time. I felt grief for a woman I used to love like a sister. I felt confusion about a niece I never knew existed, and I felt fear about what this meant for my already fragile life." Sienna threw her hands up. "So what happens now? Are we supposed to share the house with this mystery girl?" Lorian shook her head calmly. "Not exactly. There is more." She turned to me. "Miss Marlene, before Evelyn passed, she wrote a letter. She told her daughter about you, about how much she wished she had reconciled before it was too late. She told her daughter that if she ever found you, she should come with respect and kindness." My hands trembled. What did the letter say? Lorian reached into the folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. She placed it in front of me. "This is the letter," she said quietly, "and her daughter asked me personally to deliver it to you." I stared at the envelope, yellowed with time, edges worn, my name written on it in Evelyn's handwriting. My dear friend, I felt tears burning in my eyes, memories flooded back. Late-night card games, sharing recipes, whispering secrets. Evelyn crying on my shoulder the day she walked away. I never knew why she left, and now she was reaching out from the grave. Daryl whispered, "Mama, are you okay?" But before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. 3 calm knocks. Everyone froze. Sienna stepped back, her eyes widening. What now? Lorian turned toward the door slowly. That must be her. Daryl swallowed hard. Her who? Lorian looked at me gently. Evelyn's daughter. She arrived earlier than expected. She wanted to meet you today. My dear friend, my whole body went cold. My heart raced. My mind spun. I was not ready. I was not prepared. I did not know this young woman. I did not know what she wanted. I did not know if she would be kind or if she had come to claim the house. Another knock sounded, firm, patient. I looked at the door, my hands shaking. And then, before I could gather myself, the door slowly began to open. My dear friend, the moment that door began to open, I felt my whole world tighten into one trembling heartbeat. My hands clutched the edge of the table as if letting go would send me crashing to the floor. I could feel the weight of every secret, every lie, every silence pressing down on me. The door creaked softly, and then she stepped inside. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, tall, graceful, dressed simply in jeans and a soft gray sweater. No jewelry, no makeup trying to impress anyone, just calm, steady presence. She looked around the room with eyes that carried both courage and uncertainty, the kind of eyes that had learned to grow up too fast. But it was her face that struck me hardest. She looked like my husband, the shape of her forehead, the way her eyebrows tilted when she was nervous, even the small dimple on her left cheek when she offered a shy smile. It was like looking at a living echo of Samuel. My breath escaped me in a single shaky whisper. Oh, dear Lord. Sienna folded her arms tightly, her expression full of suspicion. Who are you supposed to be? The young woman looked right at her without flinching. My name is Rowan, Rowan Rowe. Daryl blinked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rowan, your mother was Evelyn. Rowan nodded. Yes, she was. I am her daughter. Then she turned her eyes softly toward me. They were warm, full of something I did not expect. Respect. She took a quiet step closer. You must be Miss Marlene. My chest tightened. I could only nod. Rowan smiled gently. My mother spoke about you often, even when she tried not to. She loved you, you know, she always did. My eyes burned instantly. I placed a hand on my heart, trying to steady the ache inside me. I whispered, your mother and I were like sisters once. I never knew she had a child. Rowan's smile grew faint. She kept a lot of things hidden, not because she wanted to hurt anyone, but because she did not know how to come back after she left. Silence filled the room, heavy but strangely soft. Even Sienna stopped her eye-rolling long enough to listen. Lorian stepped forward. Rowan came because she believed Miss Marlene deserved the truth, all of it. Rowan nodded and reached into her bag. She pulled out a small envelope tied with a red ribbon. The ribbon looked old, fragile. She held it out to me with both hands like it was something precious. This is from my mother, she said quietly. She wrote it for you before she passed. She asked me to give it to you when the time was right. My fingers trembled as I reached for it. The envelope was light, but the weight of what it meant was heavy on my chest. Rowan continued, I did not grow up knowing your family. My mother was private. She moved a lot, worked wherever she could. She did not want me mixed in the pain she carried, but before she died, she told me everything. She told me the truth about the house, about the family, about your husband, and about how she hoped you would forgive her someday. I felt a tear slip down my cheek. My voice cracked. Forgive her for what? Rowan looked down. She hesitated. Then she said something that shook the entire room. For leaving before she could tell you the truth about the money. I blinked. Money, what money? Rowan took a deep breath. When your husband refinanced the house the first time, he gave my mother $10,000 to help her get back on her feet. He told her not to tell you until she was ready to come home. My heart snapped. $10,000. My husband had given her money. That money had caused fights between us, tension, nights of silence, and all that time, I never knew where it went. Daryl looked stunned. Dad gave Aunt Evelyn that much, the money that made everything fall apart. Rowan nodded, her eyes sad. He was trying to help her start over, but she was ashamed of taking it. She did not want you to think she had taken advantage of him. She left because she felt she had caused more problems than she could fix. I covered my mouth as another tear slipped free. My dear friend, the truth hits in waves, and when it hits from the past, it hits deeper than anything else. Rowan continued softly. By the time she wanted to come back and explain everything, your husband had already passed. She wanted to come to the funeral, but she was too ashamed. Sienna stepped forward, annoyed. Okay, but what does any of this have to do with the house now? Why are you here? This is not your business. Rowan lifted her eyes slowly, her voice calm but firm. Actually, it is. Legally, I am connected to this home, but I did not come here to fight anyone or take anything from Miss Marlene. She paused, looking at me with gentleness. I came here to give her something she deserves. My breath caught again. What do I deserve? Rowan reached into her bag once more and pulled out a document that looked newer. Fresh ink, recent dates. My mother left instructions before she passed. She wanted her part of the house to go to you. Only you. Everyone froze. Daryl's jaw dropped. Mama, that means. Rowan nodded. It means the entire property belongs to Miss Marlene. The portion that came from my mother is yours now. She did not want a penny. She did not want anything from this family. Her last wish was to return what she felt she had taken. Sienna gasped. Wait, so she is not here to claim anything. Rowan shook her head. No, everything that belonged to my mother is now yours, but she wanted one more thing from me. I whispered, what was that? Rowan stepped closer, her voice soft and full of meaning. She wanted me to tell you thank you for loving her when she did not know how to love herself. My dear friend, I broke. I covered my face and cried quietly, letting years of buried confusion and hurt rise and fall inside me. Rowan reached out slowly and placed her hand on my shoulder. It was gentle, warm, familiar in a strange way. But the moment of peace did not last. Because as soon as Rowan finished speaking, Daryl stepped forward, panic flashing across his face. Mama, if the entire house belongs to you now, what about the loans? What about the debt? What about everything tied to my name? He looked terrified. And then Sienna, seeing suddenly that she had lost every bit of leverage she thought she had, snapped loudly. This changes nothing for us. Daryl still owes. He still has to deal with all the bills. And if he thinks he is dragging me back into this mess, he is wrong. But Rowan turned slowly to her. Actually, the debt is not tied to him anymore. Everyone froze again. What do you mean? Daryl asked. Rowan exchanged a look with Lorian, then spoke carefully. The lawyer updated everything 2 days ago. The house debt has shifted to the new owner. My heart stopped. My dear friend, if you have been following this story closely, you already know that a storm had been building inside my home. But Chapter 7 is the part where the clouds finally burst. This is the night everything changed. The night I stopped being quiet. The night I learned that some silence is too expensive to keep paying for. I remember it clearly. The house was dark except for the soft yellow glow of the hallway lamp. It was almost midnight, and I was sitting at the edge of my bed, rubbing my knees like I always do when the pain gets loud. I could hear Mark and Alana arguing downstairs. Their voices were low, but I have lived long enough to know the tone people use when they are talking about you. Alana's voice came first. I am tired of living with her. She is always here, always watching. I want my house back. Mark's reply stabbed me harder than any knife could. Let's give it a little time. We'll figure something out. My dear friend, let me tell you something. When your own child says the word figure about you, it means they've put your life on a table like a puzzle piece. They are deciding where to place you, and sometimes that place is not anywhere close to their heart. I sat there in the dark and felt tears slide down my face. I am not ashamed to tell you that. Tears do not make you weak. They wash the truth off your face so you can see again. But then something happened that shifted everything. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, slow and heavy. I thought it was Mark, so I wiped my cheeks quickly. But the footsteps did not stop at his room. They stopped in front of mine. Then came a small knock. Mom, are you still awake? It was Mark. He walked inside without waiting for my answer and sat at the edge of my bed like he used to when he was young and scared of thunderstorms. He looked older than I had ever seen him. His shoulders were dropped. His eyes were tired. And he took a deep breath like he had something heavy to confess. Mom, I think we need to set some boundaries. Alana feels uncomfortable. She says she wants her own space. My dear friend, do you know what he meant by boundaries? He meant I was an inconvenience in my own home, a visitor in the place I built, a problem. I stared at him, and for a moment, all the years rushed through my mind. The nights I stayed awake rocking him when he had a fever. The times I walked to work in the rain so he could have decent shoes for school. The mornings I skipped breakfast so he would have enough lunch money. Mothers give like wells, but wells dry when no one pours back into them. I looked him dead in the eyes and asked the question that had been growing inside my chest. Mark, whose house do you think this is? He blinked, confused. Then he said the words that flipped the world upside down. Mom, the house is in my name now. You signed the papers when Dad died. Remember. I felt the entire room freeze. My breath went cold. The world spun. I remembered signing something, yes, but I thought it was just a transfer for easier management. I had trusted him blindly, like mothers do. He continued talking, but I could barely hear him anymore. His voice turned into a distant hum, like wind rushing through a cracked window. The reality hit me like a punch. I had no house, no ownership, no security. Everything I built was legally his. And if it was his, then it was also hers. Alana wanted me out not because she disliked my presence, but because she knew she could do it. I swallowed hard and asked him one more thing. So if she asks you to make me leave, what will you do? His silence answered for him. My dear friend, if it was you, what would you do in that moment? Would you shout? Would you cry? Would you collapse? Would you remind your child of everything you did for them? Would you beg? I did none of that. Instead, something new woke up inside me. Something calm, something sharp, something strong. Maybe it was heartbreak. Maybe it was wisdom, maybe it was both. I stood up slowly and held my walker. Then I said the words that surprised even me. Mark, you and your wife have made your decision. Now let me make mine. He frowned. Mom, what does that mean? It means I am done being quiet. And with that, I walked past him, down the stairs, and into the cold night air. I needed space to think, to breathe, to decide what a woman like me should do next. Let me ask you, my dear friend, when the people you love push you to the edge, do you step back, or do you learn how to fly? Because that night, I decided I was going to fly. And the decision I made outside that house would change everything, not just for me, but for everyone who thought I was weak. Because the next morning, I did something none of them expected. something they would never forget. When I stepped outside the house that night, the air felt colder than usual. The wind brushed against my face like it was trying to wake me up from a long sleep. I walked to the little bench by the garden path and sat there, rubbing my hands together. I stared at the sky, and I whispered something I had not said in years. Lord, give me wisdom, because I cannot cry anymore. I sat there thinking about the truth I had just learned. I had signed away my house without understanding the papers. I had trusted Mark too much. I had allowed Alana to chip away at me little by little, and I had made myself small just to keep my child happy. My dear friend, let me tell you something powerful. When you shrink yourself for people, they start imagining you are even smaller than you are. I stayed outside for a long time. Then, suddenly, something inside me clicked. I deserve better. I deserve peace. And I am not done living. That was the moment the decision formed. The next morning, the sun came up gently through my window. I had barely slept, but my mind was clear for the first time in a long time. I got dressed. I brushed my hair, and I packed a small suitcase with only what I needed. As I zipped it up, I could hear Alana downstairs talking loudly on the phone, as if she owned the whole world. Yeah, she's leaving soon. Mark said we'll figure out the rest. I just want my house back. My house back, those words burned. I picked up my suitcase and walked downstairs. When Mark saw me, his eyes widened. Mom, where are you going? I smiled gently, the kind of smile that comes from deep understanding, not anger. Mark, I love you, but love is not enough when respect is missing. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. Let me finish. You and your wife have made this house yours, but you forgot something important. A home is not built with walls. A home is built with hearts. And since mine is not welcome here, I am taking it somewhere else. He looked stunned. Mom, you can't just leave like this. Where will you go? My dear friend, do you know that moment when your child finally realizes you are not a piece of furniture they can move around? That was the look Mark gave me. But I had already made up my mind. I will find my peace. You don't need to worry. Alana walked into the room then, wearing her robe and holding a mug of coffee. Is she finally leaving? Mark turned sharply. Alana. Stop. But I just looked at her calmly. Yes, I am leaving. She smirked a little, thinking she had won. But that was because she had no idea what was coming next. I walked past them, opened the door, and stepped outside. My suitcase rolled over the porch tiles, and do you know what I felt? Not sadness. Not regret. Not fear. I felt free. But here is the twist, my dear friend. Leaving was not my final decision. Oh no, that was just the first step. What I did next was something powerful, something bold, something that would turn everything upside down. Because I didn't go to a friend's house. I didn't go to a shelter. And I didn't go wandering around aimlessly. I walked straight into a building that would change everything. The bank. Yes, you heard me right. I marched into the bank with my cane tapping on the floor, my back straight, and my heart strong. And when I sat down in front of the loan officer, I said something that shocked even myself. Sir, I want to know everything about the papers I signed. Every detail, every line, every signature. And I want to know what my son has been hiding from me. He blinked, confused, and typed something into his computer. His eyes moved across the screen slowly. Then he looked up at me with a face that dropped. Mrs. Kavanaugh, there is something you need to see. My dear friend, that is when I knew the truth was bigger and darker than I ever imagined. That is when everything changed. And when I walked out of that bank, I was no longer the same woman. I had information that could shake my entire family. You see, my dear friend, the house was only the beginning. What Mark and Alana had done was deeper, much deeper. Something that could ruin them. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. When the bank officer slid those papers across the desk, my hands trembled a little. Not because I was scared, but because I knew deep down that I was about to see something that had been kept from me for years. He folded his hands and looked at me with gentle eyes. Mrs. Kavanaugh, these documents were signed during a time when you should have had full legal guidance. Were you given any? I shook my head. No. My son brought the papers home and told me it was just to help manage the property after my husband passed. The officer sighed and turned the computer screen toward me. Your son didn't just transfer the house to his name. He refinanced it. Twice. My heart thudded. Twice. I leaned closer, my fingers curling around my cane. My voice shook when I asked. Refinanced for what? He tapped a document. For personal loans. Large ones. Ones that used your home as collateral. And both loans are under his name alone. I felt the room stretch and bend. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My dear friend, imagine raising a child from infant to adult, feeding him from your hands, protecting him from storms, defending him from bullies, praying for him every night, and then finding out he used your home not to help you, but to bury you. The officer continued carefully, almost like he didn't want his words to hurt me. If anything goes wrong with these loans, the house can be seized. And since you are no longer a legal owner, you have no protections. You cannot stop it. You cannot challenge it. I closed my eyes, not because I was faint, but because everything inside me was rearranging. My dear friend, have you ever had a moment where your soul stands up straight even while your body is sitting? That is exactly what happened to me. I took a long breath. Then I asked one question. Is it possible for me to get copies of everything? The officer nodded. Of course, you deserve to have the truth in your hands. And as those printed pages came out one by one, I realized something powerful. I had been treated like a burden because they thought I was powerless, because they thought I was old, because they thought I would never look deeper. But age does not make you weak. It makes you wise. It makes you sharper. It makes you see things young eyes skip over. When I walked out of that bank with a thick envelope under my arm, I felt like I was carrying both a weapon and a shield. I didn't run home. I didn't confront Mark. And I certainly didn't let Alana see me shaken. Instead, I walked into the quiet library down the street. I sat at a wooden table. I opened the envelope, and I studied every page until the truth was no longer a wound, but a map. A map of how to stand up for myself. A map of how to reclaim my life. A map of how to restore what was taken from me. My dear friend, let me ask you something. If you found out your own child had used your home like an ATM, what would you do? Would you forgive? Would you fight? Would you run? Would you hide? Would you pretend you didn't know? Or would you do what I did? Because I didn't go back home, not yet. Instead, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Her name was Alina Price, my husband's old friend, a retired attorney, a woman who could cut through lies like a hot knife through butter. When she answered the phone, her voice was still strong, still commanding. Helen, is that you? Yes, and I need your help. It's serious. She didn't ask questions. She didn't hesitate. Come to my house, right now. When I arrived, she opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, "Show me everything." We sat at her dining table, the envelope between us, and she read silently for nearly an hour. Then she set the papers down, leaned back, and folded her arms. Helen, this is worse than you think. My heart tightened. How? Eleanor tapped one line on the papers. The second loan wasn't taken last year. It was taken 4 months ago, meaning Mark and Alana knew exactly what they were doing while they were planning to push you out. They were preparing to secure the house without you in it. My dear friend, let me tell you, betrayal from a stranger hurts your feelings. But betrayal from your child hurts your bones. Eleanor looked at me with fiery eyes. You have grounds for legal action, serious grounds, and if you want to move forward, I can help. I stared at her. The room felt heavy. My heart felt bruised, but something inside me had changed. I was no longer the woman who cried quietly in her room. I was no longer the woman tiptoeing around her own home. I was no longer the woman shrinking under Alana's glare. I lifted my chin. Eleanor, I want to fight. She nodded. Then we begin today. But my dear friend, here is where the story takes its sharpest turn. Because while Eleanor and I began building a case, Mark and Alana were busy doing something in that house. Something they thought I would never know. Something that would backfire in a way they never expected. After leaving Eleanor's house with a full legal plan in place, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not loud power. Not angry power. Not petty power. A gentle kind, a steady kind. The kind that feels like your backbone finally remembered what it was built for. For 2 weeks, Eleanor and I worked in silence. She contacted people. She gathered documents. She reached out to legal counselors who still owed her favors from her days practicing law. And with every day that passed, the case grew stronger. But while we prepared, I heard whispers from neighbors. Quiet rumors carried from people who still kept an eye on Mark and Alana. They said the couple was fighting almost every night. They said Mark seemed nervous. They said Alana looked furious, like someone whose plans were falling apart. I didn't go back to the house during those weeks. Not once. And my dear friend, let me tell you why that is important. Sometimes the best way to win a battle is to step away from the field and let the enemy's own actions bury them. But everything came crashing down one Friday morning. I was sitting at Eleanor's kitchen table, sipping tea, when my phone rang. I looked at the screen and froze. It was Mark. I answered with a calm voice. Hello, Mark. He did not say hello back. His voice was shaky. Mom, the bank called. Something is wrong with the house. I closed my eyes slowly. I knew this moment would come. I knew it the moment I saw the loan papers, but I wanted him to say it. What happened? There was a long pause. Then he whispered. The second loan went into default. They're coming for the house. We might lose everything. My dear friend, imagine the same child who once held your hand to cross the street now calling you because he is standing in the middle of danger he created. That is how painful his voice sounded. But before I could respond, he continued. Mom, please, I need your help. Help? That word echoed inside me. The same word I needed from him when I was scared. The same word I needed when I felt pushed aside. The same word I needed when he sat on my bed and told me he wanted boundaries. Now he needed me. I took a slow breath. Mark, where's your wife in all this? His voice dropped even more. She left. She packed her things and left yesterday. I think she knew this was coming. She said she couldn't live under this pressure. She said I should handle it since it was my name on everything. And just like that, the truth fell into place. She had planned it. She had used him. The loans, the house, the pressure, she had been pulling the strings. And when the consequences arrived, she stepped aside and let them land on him. My dear friend, some people do not love you. They love what they can take from you. I spoke softly. Mark, meet me at the house in an hour. When I hung up, Elena looked at me over her glasses. Are you sure you want to do this alone? I nodded. This part is something I need to do face to face. An hour later, I walked into the house I once called home. The living room was a mess. Papers on the floor, boxes everywhere. Mark sat on the couch with his head in his hands. When he looked up and saw me, he broke. Mom, I am so sorry. I really messed up. I didn't know what I signed. Alana, she told me it was normal. She handled the paperwork. She told me it was for our future. I thought I was doing the right thing. I walked closer and put my hand on his shoulder. Mark, I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. He nodded. Why did you treat me like I didn't belong in my own home? He stared at the floor, his voice cracked. Because Alana said I needed to choose between you and her. She said I couldn't be a man if I kept letting you run the house. She said no woman would feel comfortable living with her husband's mother. She said it made me look weak. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, not for myself, but for him, for the boy I raised who had grown into a man who didn't even know his own worth. I lifted his chin gently so he would look at me. Mark, love does not make you choose between the people who care about you. Real love makes space. He nodded, wiping his face. I know that now, but it took losing everything to see it. I sat beside him. Then I took the envelope from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. Mark, listened to me very carefully. You made mistakes, big ones, but you are still my son, and I am still your mother, and where truth exists, healing can exist too. He looked confused. What do you mean? I opened the envelope and pulled out the documents Alina and I had prepared. Mark, I could take legal action against you. I could reclaim this house through the courts. I could even expose everything. You could lose far more than this home. He swallowed hard. His face went pale. But I continued. I am not doing that. He blinked. Mom, you're not. No, because I am not here for revenge. I am here for restoration, and for wisdom, and for peace, something your wife never understood. I handed him a different set of papers. Instead, you are going to sign the property back into both of our names, joint ownership, equal rights. And then, when the refinancing mess is settled, we will sell the house, together, and we will split the profits, fairly. His eyes widened. Mom, why would you give me half after everything? Because life is not about revenge. It is about lessons. And this will be the lesson God uses to change you, and maybe save you. He covered his face and cried. Deep, painful tears. I waited. Sometimes crying is the first sign of rebuilding. When he finally looked at me, he whispered, Mom, I don't deserve this. I smiled softly. No one deserves grace, but everyone needs it. We stood together, signing the new agreement, the legal protection, the shared ownership, the end of the manipulation that had been holding him hostage. When we were done, he hugged me, and for the first time in years, it felt like my son was hugging me, not the man Alana had shaped him to be. When I stepped outside the house, the sky was bright, warm, peaceful. My dear friend, that was the day I realized something important. Winning is not destroying the people who hurt you. Winning is rebuilding the parts of yourself they thought they broke forever. So yes, the grandmother won. Not through anger. Not through shouting. Not through revenge. But through wisdom. Through courage. Through truth. Through love that did not bend to manipulation. And here is my last question to you, my dear friend. If someone tried to take your peace, your home, your dignity, your place in the world, would you give up or would you rise? Remember, your story is not over. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Before you go, my dear friend, do me one favor. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, like this story, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another powerful and emotional story. And please tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I want to know the wonderful people sharing this moment with me. Thank you for walking through this journey with me.